I'm sure everyone's heard by now that Arma 4 has finally been given a release window. And if you haven't, it goes something like this. Bohemia Interactive held a special 25th anniversary concert where resident Chad and musical genius / audio lead Jan Dušek started out the concert with an epic performance supported by the Prague Symphonic Orchestra. In case you don't recall, Jan Dušek was the former project lead of Arma Reforger, who some say was the one responsible for getting the game out of crash limbo and into the golden age of stability we saw for the 1.0 launch. A moment of silence to pay our respects and pray for the new sheriff in town. Anywho, since there's only like 10 people on the experimental branch right now, let me tell you about something that just dropped which may give us some insights into Arma 4. Now, it might sound insignificant, but Bohemia has updated the tutorial for Reforger, and oh, it's good. You know, for an Arma title. Facial expressions are in, mouths move when characters speak, localized dialogue in the world appears to be scriptable, which will make creating story-driven scenarios more epic. Characters blink now too, and instead of the sandboxy theme park that we've gotten used to, the tutorial now has an underlying narrative.
Look, Bohemia made a Bethesda game.
The narrative itself is very self-aware and quite hilarious in some places, and it gives us some hints to the upcoming conflict between US and Soviet forces. I won't spoil anything here, as it's 100% worth playing through yourself, but I must say that it helps new players get acquainted with the game mechanics much more than any of my videos ever could. So, I guess I'm out of a job now.
I don't remember being able to do this.
If we take a step back for a moment and look at the big picture, from their very own website, they say that Arma 4 is going to redeploy the historical context and many of the assets of Reforger. So we know with 99.999% certainty that it's going to take place within the Cold War setting. I'm sorry for all the people who still think Arma 4 will be in a modern setting, but I just don't see Bohemia spending the kind of budget it takes to hire a cinematic crew and a full orchestral treatment for the soundtrack on a throwaway title like Reforger. It just sounds wasteful. I think it's more likely that Reforger is basically the alpha to Arma 4, where it can take all the arrows and iron out all the bugs, all while giving modders a significant head start in learning the new engine before release. And this new tutorial may just give us a taste of the kind of narrative quality we can expect for Arma 4. Even though Reforger is getting near completing its roadmap, Arma 4 is still another 2 years out at least, which means that either Arma Reforger has a lot more coming to it, or Arma 4 might be much bigger than we think. During the release window reveal at the end of the concert, the scene is gliding over some island, which some think it might be Negova. The lore masters out there can correct me in the comments for some algorithm juice, so I'll say that I recall Negova being an important location during the Arma Cold War Assault narrative. And according to the wiki, the island is situated along Arland, Everon, and Malden, which was briefly mentioned in the tutorial. So then that begs the question, is Arma 4 going to be a remaster of the original Operation Flashpoint, or will it tell a different story? We know that Bohemia likes to recreate real-life locations and mix them together into a fictionalized location. For example, Everon is based on the real-life Kirk Island in Croatia. Arland is based on one of the Åland Islands in the Finnish archipelago, or whatever. And Negova appears to be based on the island of Limnos, which looks very similar to Altus actually. And here's Stratus, by the way. Even the Reforger soundtrack might give us a clue as well, since one of the tracks is even titled Task Force Malden. And if we look at the map of Cold War Europe, almost all of the islands are within proximity of NATO and Soviet-controlled areas. But one island stands out as particularly interesting. If we look at Albania, they used military force to expel Soviet forces in 1961 and ultimately withdrew from the Warsaw Pact in 1968 after the Soviets invaded Czechoslovakia. And it is this area that just so happens to be where the real-life island of Malden is based off of, while Negova appears just south of Greece and Bulgaria, where the border of Soviet and NATO forces meet. So, who knows what kind of narrative Arma 4 will have, other than it being set definitely during the Cold War, where Soviet and NATO forces might have a real fight this time. I say a real fight because I recall Operation Flashpoint was about a conflict sparked by a rogue Soviet general, but the tutorial in Reforger seems to indicate that they're preparing an official confrontation. And let's not forget that Reforger takes place during 1989, just 4 years after the original Operation Flashpoint. And the Soviet Union ultimately fell in 1991, which Arma 4's campaign could be the story of how that happened. Personally, I would have liked to see Arma 4 take place during World War II or Vietnam and cover some famous conflicts that have actually happened. I wish we could have reenacted or created an alternate timeline. But what do you think? Given what we have now with Reforger, is Arma 4 going to be bare bones like Arma 3 was when it first came out? Or will it be much bigger, more impressive, and worthy of the next 10-year-long Arma cycle? This is Ironbeard, and, well, I guess I got a tutorial to finish. So I'll see you on the battlefield.